Barrister Akere Muna, welcome to the set today.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
All right. As a fledgling media house, CryoutTv is honored to have you here today.
Well, I'm honored to be here. Fledgling, I think you guys are doing a great job.
All right. My name is Joseph Shum, and on a personal level, I want to begin by commending your very, very extensive resume.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. And it's once again my singular pleasure to have this tete-a-tete with you. Even more awesome is the fact that I just might be sitting next to the next president of Cameroon.
You just might.
Yes. Okay. All right. Before we go any further, we're in Houston, Texas, and you will be honoring your town hall meeting today. I believe it's Briar Park Avenue.
Correct. Yeah.
2900 Briar Park Avenue.
Yeah.
And so this is just going to be an avant-garde of what to expect later on tonight.
Yep.
All right. It's old news, of course, that you are running for Supreme Office of Cameroon. So my first question to you will be, why now? What's your motivation? I mean, you are obviously a very successful attorney at law.
Correct.
You could vouch into a cozy and happy retirement. Why put the pressure on yourself?
Well, I think it's a process. This is a result of a process. I've been working in the area of governance for the past 22 years. And nationally and internationally, and with real focus on anti-corruption and systemic management of a country, so that the country functions better in the interest of the citizens. And I've done that in many countries on behalf of the African Union. In the African peer review mechanism, I've done that. And I've been to many countries, but I keep seeing what's going on in my own country when I think I have the experience and the know-how to help a systemic change. And then I said, I have to be either part of the solution or be an accomplice to the failure. So then I took the decision that I better decide to run for office. And the latest issues that have to do with the management of diversity in our country have really strengthened me in that resolve, because we have such a great country. And a lot of stuff can be done to make sure Cameroonians are happy there. So of course, and now because they're going to be presidential elections, and I think it's the biggest and the greatest opportunity that we have to turn things around. And I want to be part of the solution.
Okay. But your detractors say you belong to a class of elitist, bourgeois, spoon-fed lawyers, politicians, and businessmen. That essentially you are cut from the same cloth as Mr. Biya himself.
Yeah.
What do you have to say to that?
Well, I granted that those who are speaking like that now are doing that from looking at the society the way it works today. Because the way our society has been turned around today is those who are in high positions satisfy their own first, and the push. There's nepotism, there's tribalism, and what have you. But my own background is totally different, totally different. I walked going to school, although my father was prime minister and minister. I was taught to understand that what I get is what I work for. I left and came to the States, to Washington, D.C., where I trained in international studies and international law, my first degree. I worked to pay my fees, part of my fees, the other part was paid by my brother, Daniel, who was a doctor. Then I went to London, where my brothers contributed for me to do my bar exam. So mine has been a life of working for what I get. And then I came back home. It took me 2 or 3 years to get enrolled on the bar, because some people just thought that these are not Anglophone, so I was tortured. When I complained to my father, he said, well, they can't slow you, they cannot stop you. So I think I've gone through what any other Cameroonian should go through, and even maybe more, because people do this to you, testing you, to see whether you're going to come out and pull some string or some connections. So, and then of course, coming back, being a barrister, being elected by my peers, to become head of the bar for 5 years and going out internationally. So saying that I didn't work for what I have is a bit unfair, because the rankings and positions I've gained are more out of the country than within the country. So I think that, you know, for those who know me, they know I work hard for what I have. And I think I can work hard for my country as well.
Now, the elections are taking place in Cameroon.
Yeah.
So people ask the question, why what some people call the jet setting around the world, trying to meet the people in the diaspora? Why do you emphasize so much on meeting what's supposed to be a smaller group of voters?
True. Firstly, so I can get to talk to you. It's a good reason, I think. But more seriously, the connection between Cameroon and its diaspora, not even Cameroon, Africa itself, the link between the diaspora, the African diaspora, and the people back home is amazing, financially, economically, and in terms of morally. If you see the connection between the diaspora in the States here and the UK and the problems in Northwest and Southwest, the support they have brought to the suffering of the people in those other parts of the country, sure there's a link. So I also think it's important for them to understand what the stakes are. So I come out to meet them. But I do this simultaneously with meeting people from the government, the parliament of many countries. So it's important for them to know exactly what Cameroon is going through. So that's basically what I'm doing. I'm meeting and greeting, yes. I'm informing, I'm listening to the diaspora. And I'm really excited when I meet them because they think out of the box. They are critical and they force you to explain what you're trying to do. So it's important to inform them. I was part of those who drafted the SDF Constitution in '92. I went on to work on the campaign. And when Furundi won, because he did win, and didn't take power, I understood that the kind of relay you have outside for internal action, when you're dealing with the government we have, is very important. You must have people outside who can relay the action, relay what you're trying to say, and relay what is happening from inside, and they can take it out so that people can understand where you're coming from. So, to summarize, one, to connect and explain to the diasporans, and two, to make sure international institutions and other countries that are partners with our country know exactly what hurts us.
Okay. What's crazy is you just answered part of my next question, which was going to be who won the elections in '92, because it's a story.
Well, I think that, you know, I was in the campaign team. It is clear that Furundi won, and in any case, if you look at the margin of defeat, no African leader can accept to lose by that kind of less than 2-point margin, as it was the case in '92. But I think that we were prepared, but not really prepared in terms of managing the victory. So we came out too late, but I think that we should have been prepared before. And I think that it's also important to make sure that the power is not just the people who are in position. There's the civil servants, there are all of these people who need to be reassured, the police, the gendarmes and all that. They need to be reassured that a change of regime doesn't threaten them. I think they wouldn't work on that.
So what makes you think 2018 is going to be any different from 1992?
I wasn't running in 1992. That's the first difference. Second difference, the Cameroonians have gone through a lot. We have a very resilient people who understand now that we are going nowhere. We have a president who has been there for 36 years. He's 85 years old. It's different from '92. He's delegated a lot. We've gone through a process of unimaginable stealing from the state, to the point that the state itself recognizes this. So I think that the time is now really, and what I'm offering really is what the country needs. A systemic change in terms of governance and management of diversity, which has been woefully managed to the point that some of our brothers, rightfully so, feel there's no place for them in the union anymore, for the simple reason that the government itself has said, you know, it is our way or the highway. So you push them into a corner. So what do you expect? I think that it is easy for us to bring back hope to the Cameroonian people by doing what we're trying to do, make them understand that this time no fraud mechanism can be above the will of the people. And that's why we are going to the grassroots, through the Now movement, and mobilizing people. So on that day, they should register. On that day, they could vote. And so they just stay around and watch their vote.
Okay. Now, there's the timing of your sister's lawsuit, which I personally find suspect.
Yeah.
Now, is this a calculated ploy to...
well, first, we have to be clear that my sister is her right to seek recourse from the courts, as any other Cameroonian. She has her rights, and she has the right to defend them. And if the court has to go to court, you know, she can do that. But what bothers the family, and should bother every Cameroonian, that ours is a large family, but there's only one person who is bringing a suit. And the fact that the suit is against the judgment of 2002, which made my late brother Daniel administrator of the family estate. So how am I concerned? You know, I didn't benefit anything from that.
Exactly.
So it is suspect, as one can say. But I'm saying that, you know, as a lawyer, it's a ridiculous suit. It's laughable as a suit. But you know, she's within her right. And the Cameroonians who question the timing are doing so rightfully, because things I'm seeing and hearing, it's so clear that, you know, some people think that they have gotten the thing that will stop me, but I think they have deceived themselves, because it's a non-matter. We'll go through the court and go through the mechanisms, and so I think it's only fair for any Cameroonian to be able to go to court, even if it means foolishly.
All right. So you have obviously rubbed shoulders with the creme de la creme of world leaders. I mean, I can.
Well, I don't know if I've rubbed shoulders, but I'm lucky to have made quite a few. That's correct. Yes.
And I did a little bit of research this morning, and I could, with religious fervor, go down the long list of very prominent politicians you have had to meet.
Correct.
As evidenced by the videos and the pictures out there.
Yeah.
But the one particular guy drew my attention, Mr. Saad Hariri, who's Prime Minister of Lebanon.
Yes.
I see some similarities between you both. You both come from prominent political families.
Correct. Yeah.
His dad, Rafik, I believe, was president, Prime Minister.
Prime Minister.
Until his unfortunate death in February of 2005.
Correct.
Car bombing in Beirut.
Yeah.
And he is head of the Future movement.
Yeah.
You are head of the Now movement.
Yeah.
Did you take a page out of his playbook?
Well, I have to say this. I went to Lebanon because the Lebanese are a motto of the economy of many countries. There are over 100,000 of them in Ivory Coast. There are also close to 100,000 in Senegal. And they are immigrants of a very special caliber. When they go to settle, they almost adopt those countries. They marry, they even learn the language, and they really come to stay. Right. There are a lot of them in West Africa.
Of course.
And so I went there to meet them, the economic operators there, to find out exactly what this body is about. You know, in Lebanon, there are 5 million Lebanese, and out of Lebanon, there are 18 million.
That's a big deal.
Almost 3 to 4 times the size of the population lives out of the country. So I went to learn. And also from the Prime Minister Hariri, who received me, I have admiration for his ideas and what he does, and he has a lot of experience in business as well. So I thought it was good to talk to him and find out. True, of course, coming from a background with a family, political family background, also this affinity, the kind of affinity I felt when I met with Uhuru Kenyatta for the first time, you know, stuff like that. So that is normal, but I think that it is more the kind of hard work that he does that pulled me towards what he's doing. Well, the Now movement, the name is inspired because I remember when I was in secondary school, they used to come and tell us, oh, you young ones are the Cameroon of tomorrow. But guess what? I'm now 66, and the guys who told me that are still there. So I was wondering whether my tomorrow is probably in the grave. So there you go.
Speaking of the Lebanese, we're not going to go into a history course here, but they went through a brutal civil war.
That's correct.
Which was primarily caused by religious differences.
Correct.
And but they, however, figured out a power-sharing deal.
Exactly.
Where I believe the president, who happens to be General Michael Ayoun,
Yeah.
Michel Ayoun,
Yes.
is a Maronite Christian.
Yes.
And the speaker, I believe, Nabi Berry is
Yes.
Shia,
Yes.
and your friend Saad is Sunni and Prime
Yes.
Minister.
Yeah.
Now, do you think a similar system will work in Cameroon along linguistic lines?
You've put the nail on the head. Firstly, the problem with Cameroon is the management of diversity. We have diversity at two levels. At the macro level, which is cultural diversity, which we inherited from so-called colonial masters. And then at the micro level, we have diversity in terms of our own different ethnic groups. Now, what has been dominant so far in the last years has been the macro level. How do you make sure that an English-speaking Cameroonian feels as Cameroonian as a French-speaking Cameroonian? How do you make sure that the majority doesn't get arrogant and feels that there's something they can do to silence the minority? And that's the management of diversity. The Nigerians have managed it by some kind of tacit custom of alternating between the two big regions.
Okay. North and
Exactly. And in Cameroon, I think this was already addressed by the Constitution in 1961 by saying there's a president who is either Anglophone or Francophone and a vice president who is actually was clear from one of the federated states. It was not even Anglophone or Francophone, from one of the federated states. It means that the country at that time took into account the two territories. There were two territories, and that there should be a power sharing mechanism and alternation. That's what I think. And that's the biggest problem we have back home. So it is the Francophones who are saying now that for 60 years we have had a Francophone leader. Maybe it's time to have an Anglophone leader. So maybe in the short term, to ensure that there is no semblance of domination by numbers, that you have a system that permits some kind of alternation. I think that is one of the solutions. But I think the solutions really is to make sure that the conditions are better for everyone, because once everybody can live peacefully and happily in a country, there's no need for that.
Okay. Well, so let's get to the meat and potatoes of this chat. The elephant in the room is obviously the Anglophone problem.
Yes.
Now, back to your father.
Yeah.
In a way, his legacy is an indictment against you, because he was one of the supporters and architects of the unification. Now, what do you say to all these people who say, well, it's another Muna, it's going to be the same story?
Well, listen, you're talking about Solomon Tandeng Muna. My name is Akere Muna. Okay. Maybe you had the opportunity to choose the family you were born in. I didn't have that opportunity to choose what family I was born in. Well, there you go. And so my father acted the way he acted in a specific situation. And before he passed, and Dr. Foncha, they traveled here, I traveled with them, and they said what they thought about what happened. But I won't go there because there's a lot of stuff.
Okay.
But I think anybody who's arguing against what I'm saying is that I'm the son of my father. Well, I think they've won the argument, because indeed I'm the son of my father. Okay. Now, anybody whose argument is based on what I'm saying now, I'm ready to listen, to have a fair debate. Now, but if he wants to talk about what my father did, well, I probably want to know what his father did, and we can compare their histories. Okay. But for the moment, I think people should listen to what I have to say, listen to my experience, and ask me the questions. Now, it reminds me very much of a very brilliant journalist in Cameroon. I was coming out, just elected as head of the bar, came to me and said, is this a dynasty you're trying to create? Your father was so-and-so, and now your brother was head of the bar, and now you're also becoming head of the bar. What do you think this is? I said, well, Mr. Journalist, I don't want to say his name, I know you as a brilliant journalist. And from your logic, I will make sure that your son or your brother never becomes a brilliant journalist. He looked at me and laughed. I said, that's what you're trying to say. Everybody has their own future. Everybody has their own capacity. As a matter of fact, I would like people to judge me for what I've done and what I intend to do, as opposed to remind me that I'm my father's son, that I know very well.
So speaking of your father,
Yeah.
if he comes back today, may his soul rest in peace, by the way. If he comes back today, you think he still espouses the one and indivisible Cameroon?
Well, before my father passed, he said the only system that can protect Cameroon is the federal system. So he doesn't have to come back today. He and Dr. Foncha said that clearly, my father. I have a recording of his voice saying that the best solution is the federal system.
Okay. So, well, there's no elixir for solving the country's problems, obviously. But if I was to put you in Mr. Bia's shoes today, what would be your roadmap to solving the Anglophone problem?
Well, the very first thing is to free all the prisoners, amnesty, and to make it easy for every Cameroonian to come back home. Because just like any other Anglophone, I'm suspect. And in my own case, it's even more intriguing. I was called to the gendarmes and interviewed for 5 hours, and they were asking me if I'm a secessionist or I'm the person controlling those who are out of the country, all that kind of stuff. They called me secessionist. I come and talk to an Anglophone, there's a Francophone calling me a secessionist. I come and talk to an Anglophone, he said my father sold. So where exactly do you place me? So, but more seriously, firstly, you need to do that. You have to have a dialogue. You have to have a systemic change. The country has to change in terms of what system we have. Constitutional, the form of the state, the right of the individuals, the rapport between a citizen and the state, that has to change. And of course, then you have to go to the economy, because really, if people can live in their country comfortably, with social justice, and the economy is booming, of course, life will be easier. All the reports about Boko Haram says that it is rooted in economic despair. So I think that you have to look firstly, therefore, the dialogue, the systemic change, and the kind of economy that can maintain the Cameroonians, of course, with social justice close by.
I think you sort of answered my next question. It was going to be, if you get elected president, how do you handle the dossiers of Mancho BBC, Julius Ayuk-Tabe, and all the rest?
Well, listen, I'm handling my chambers with my brother Bernard. We're handling those dossiers now through the courts, and those dossiers are simply ridiculous.
Is it true that you are doing this for free?
Of course. We are defending around 80 people pro bono. Not only that, we are paying all the court fees for appeal. All those who have appealed, we have paid the court fees. Not only that, we most of the time have to make sure they have food, which we supply.
Okay. Because there's word out there that you'll sell out because you're pursuing selfish political goals instead of emphasizing on the current situation, which is taking care of the Anglophone problem.
Well, I'm taking care of the problem. I've been to Kembong. I don't know how many of those guys who are saying I've been to Kembong. I've been to Kembong. I've seen the village. I've seen those suffering. I've seen the IDBs. I've been to Manu. I've spoken to the bishop. I know what's happening there. I'm in Yaoundé. We have 4 lawyers, 24 and 24, attending to those guys going to court. My brother Bernard at 77 goes to court from 8 in the morning to 7 in the evening to be by those guys. He goes there to have a Christmas meal with them, talks to them, advises them, gives them the courage. You know, as Cameroonians, as people who are lawyers, and we are putting our skills to try and defend them within the context. That's what Bernard is doing. Me, on my own part, I say, well, listen, I think the political path offers a solution, and that's what I'm trying to do. So those who feel that, well, you know, we're not doing anything, well, they should try and talk to the guys who are locked up.
That's fair enough. Well, the situation on the ground has unfortunately devolved into bloodshed and
massive bloodshed.
With their proliferation of armed groups, we see no end to what's going on the ground. Now, my next question is two-pronged. how do you go about campaigning with all the insecurity that is taking place in the north and southwest regions?
Firstly,
more important, even better, how do you get people to go out and vote if there are bullets flying left and right?
True. I think that people should understand that the government knows that part of the electorate that will support someone like me and the Anglophone parts. So if they can cause them not to vote, they imagine that I will be the first person to be affected by that.
Right.
I'll lose the vote. So I think it is important that we defy that theory by registering and voting. And that's why I'm out here talking to you, talking to the guys in the diaspora, relay the message that if we do that, we fall in the trap. So we'll be in the same position come November. So it's important, therefore, that we make sure that we go out and register and vote massively. So you say it is unsafe, but I'm saying that we should try the ballot before we go for the bullet.
Maître Akere Muna, on dit de vous être très bilingue. Est-ce vrai?
Bon, ben écoute, j'ai un cabinet qui marche dans la partie francophone depuis 40 ans. Et je plaide en français la plupart du temps. Je pense qu'on peut présumer que je suis bilingue.
Bon, personnellement, je trouve votre bilinguisme un atout et peut-être un facteur déterminant pour votre candidature. Moi, au contraire, mon français est approximatif.
Bon, ben écoute, ça me semble être mieux que le mien, en tout cas.
Mais je vais oser vous poser ne serait-ce qu'une question en français. On dit que là où la route passe, le développement suit.
Ça, c'est vrai.
Quel est donc votre plan pour dépoussiérer nos axes routiers et améliorer la sécurité routière?
Première chose, l'infrastructure est capitale. Ceux qui disent que le Cameroun est indivisible, hélas, ils l'ont divisé par le manque d'infrastructures. Il y a des parties du pays où les gens ne peuvent pas aller. Il y a des parties du pays où les travailleurs refusent d'y aller parce qu'ils savent qu'y aller, il n'y a pas d'école, il n'y a pas de soins, il n'y a pas de route. Donc c'est ça déjà la division, par un développement très inégal. Donc la politique que je prends va être basée sur l'amélioration de l'infrastructure routière et ferroviaire. Je l'ai déjà dit. Dans les premiers 5 ans, entre Douala et Yaoundé, on doit pouvoir monter dans un train électrique. Première chose, je l'ai déjà dit. Les grands axes, il faudrait qu'il y ait tous les grands axes entre les départements doivent être, n'est-ce pas, des axes principaux qui permettent l'accès à tous les départements. Et aussi, en commençant par des coins où il y a une forte production, qu'on puisse aider ces personnes-là à amener, n'est-ce pas, le produit vers les marchés. Donc c'est par là qu'il faut commencer. Et puis finalement, tout ça ne peut que marcher s'il y a les citoyens ont une bonne santé. Il faut regarder ce côté-là. Donc en fait, du côté social, je prends donc une justice équitable. Sur le plan de santé, il faudrait santé universelle. Et sur le plan de l'éducation, il faudrait une éducation qui soit arrimée, n'est-ce pas, à notre pays, parce qu'il faudrait bien que les gens aient à l'école, mais il faudrait aussi bien qu'ils puissent trouver un emploi à la fin. Et on a un système d'éducation très archaïque qui ne permet pas que les gens qui sortent de l'école puissent être opérationnels, s'épanouir comme vous le dites. Donc, et puis sur le plan économique, avec une infrastructure ferroviaire et portuaire de façon regardez entre Douala et Cryoutv en port. Quand vous avez un port naturel à Tiko et à Limbe qui aurait pu être exploité, vous avez une ville comme Manfé qui est très proche du Nigeria. Si on faisait une zone franche à Manfé, vous allez avoir toutes les industries nigériennes, au lieu d'être installées à Abuja ou je ne sais pas où, viendront s'installer à Manfé pour envoyer les produits vers le Nigeria et aussi vers le Cameroun. Donc il y a beaucoup de choses à faire. Au lieu d'être là où nous sommes, où nous importons déjà les stades préfabriqués.
Vous avez fait beaucoup de travail dans le domaine de la l'anticorruption.
Ouais. L'anticorruption.
Oui, bien sûr. Votre passage avec Transparency International.
9 ans,
est très
exactement.
bien connu. Qui détient la palme d'or de la corruption au Cameroun?
Au Cameroun. Quel secteur ou bien quelle personne?
En général, qui détient
Général, quel
la palme
secteur?
d'or?
Moi, je pense que les secteurs les plus corrompus au Cameroun, c'est la justice, les finances, et seront les baromètres maintenant, hein, le vox populi qu'on a demandé aux gens, et la police. Mais, il faut mettre un bémol. Ça veut dire que ça de façon macro. Et dans le ressenti, je l'ai déjà dit, il faut se poser la question. Pourquoi est-ce qu'il y a beaucoup de Camerounais qui veulent entrer dans la police? Pourquoi il y a beaucoup de Camerounais qui veulent être douaniers? Pourquoi il y a beaucoup de Camerounais qui veulent être inspecteurs d'impôts? Pourquoi est-ce qu'il y a beaucoup de Camerounais qui veulent être préfets? C'est la question qui indique que des gens vont vers ce métier-là pour autre chose, pas pour la passion. Et ça transforme tout le processus. Et on a un système, ce qu'on a maintenant, le scandale de l'ENAM, où on a eu quelqu'un qui est mort, qui est passé major.
Un cadavre.
Un cadavre, bon, un cadavre intelligent apparemment.
Okay. Well, back to English.
Yeah.
So obviously you used a lot of tact and diligence and diplomacy, I would say, to create the Rainbow Coalition.
Yes, when in the bar.
Which propelled you to
the bar.
President of Cameroon Bar Association.
Yeah.
Are you willing to consider such a coalition?
Well, that's what I'm doing now, really. People don't realize it, but the Cameroon Bar Association is a macrocosm of our country. The same contradiction, the same conflict at the macro level, Anglophone, Francophone, and at the micro level between different ethnic groups. And you had to juggle that. That's what I did to become president of the Bar Association. And I think that an understanding of this mix of our country is essential to do anything in the country. And that I understand. I've been able to manage that. And so I think you can't run our country without a clear understanding of the ethnic mix and this macro culture which we inherited from the colonial past.
Okay, because the reason why I asked that question, because Mr. Joshua Osi, who's obviously running for president as well, reportedly made a statement that, hey, he's either join us or be in opposition next year. What do you say about that?
Well, you know, that is his opinion. That's not mine, because I've said repeatedly that, you know, it's easier to conquer together. And you don't speak in the same way as those you are planning to unseat. Because that sentence sounds very much as saying the opposition is one and indivisible, and we are the opposition. I don't think that is it. But I think that people, Joshua, whom I know very well, we're friends. I've worked for him as a lawyer as well. We know each other very well. I think that, you know, it is important for you to start your campaign by affirming certain things, which I think shows determination. I tell everybody that I've never lost an election, and I'm not going to start with the presidential election to lose. It shows my determination, but it doesn't take away from the fact that I've said that the country is more important, and that I'm ready to sit down and support any person who shows me the guarantees that their candidacy is going to help the country and going to bring victory.
Say a word or two about your work with Transparency International, and tell the people how the experiences you have had will help you.
There's something I learned in TI. I was 9 years vice chair. Before that, I was coordinator for Africa. And before that, also I was a board member. And I was the founder of TI Cameroon. There's something they call state capture. State capture is when few people manage a country to the point where it is as if they are personal property. And everything that is done in the country is to feed the small group,
that's right,
minority. And the minority. And that's what we have. You have it in Latin America, in some countries. You have it in some West African countries. That is what happens. When a few oligarchs take over a country, And everything, the laws, everything is made for them. You know, in Cameroon, when you take a stupid example like what they call public-private partnership in business. In Cameroon, it's nonsensical. Because when you go to the public sector, is the guy there. If you go to the private sector, is the guys through other people there. So the partnership really does not make a difference. Right. The management of conflict of interest in Cameroon is disastrous. Okay, they tried with this Senate to try and get some people to resign one position and all that kind of stuff. But the level of conflict of interest in Cameroon is so high because of this issue. And the issue is what we are raising now. And we have to deal with it. We have to deal with it in such a way that every Cameroonian has a fair chance. And that is corruption. Corruption in Cameroon destroys the three pillars of any society, which is almost biblical. I'm a Christian, even the Muslims have it too as well. 1, healing. 2, learning. 3, judging. Judging is the courts, healing is the hospitals, of course, and learning is the schools and education.
Right.
And if you want to look at a country, look at these 3 sectors. If they're faltering, then you know very well. Look at Cameroon, the health system. I had the widow of one of my workers who called me about a month ago. She was at a hospital, bitten by a snake, and she had to pay money before they could look at her. Snake bite?
Which is, would be deadly.
Yeah, in a matter of minutes. That's a hospital. Education system, I don't have to tell you. How many people do you have outside looking for jobs? Look at what happened in Enam. Everybody knows that people buy to go in there. The judicial system, look at what people lose, their land, their property, and what's happening because of the judicial system. And the way people are transferred here, there, and everywhere. So I think that, you know, corruption is a real problem in our country, and it's systemic. If you fix that, then we're halfway into fixing our country.
Okay. So when you announced your candidature, you went on what I deemed was a media blitz of sorts.
Yeah.
So my next question has to do with press freedom.
Yes.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how free is the media in Cameroon?
Well, I think the best thing that summarizes is what Idi Amin used to say. We have freedom of speech. But how did he put it? He said, you are free to say what you want, but we're also free to do what we think or what you say. Something to that effect. So yes, in Cameroon, certain times I'm really amazed by what you can see. But everybody knows it, that the space for the journalists in Cameroon is very restricted. We have very repressive laws. I don't see why we have press offenses. Okay, I think that the civil law should deal with that. If somebody writes insulting me, anything, I should go to the civil court and do the case there. It shouldn't be something that should be done in the criminal court. So I think the press freedom in Cameroon is a bad way. You can be arrested anytime. And even being a journalist is very difficult. And you know, I consider the press as giving a public service. So the system should be made in such a way that, you know, the men of the press are not subjected to the kind of economic situation they are in. You know, I think print papers should be subsidized. And when they try to subsidize the press, it should not be by choice. We are now entering a new era where certain political persons have surrogates who have now opened TVs and radios, and you hear all sorts of crazy stuff on it. The other day I was hearing over some TV, somebody actually saying that they are a radio of a certain ethnic group, and they're going to deal with this and the other kind of person. There's something we never thought about in our country. So I think on both sides, the country, the government, in the semblance of a freedom of press situation, is allowing the craziest things to happen. So I think that sector has to be totally cleansed. And I don't think the government is in the business of selling news. I think that things like Cameroon Tribune and CryoutTv will have to be thought about again in terms of their functioning and their role in the state.
Okay. All right. My next question has to do with the justice system. As a man of law,
yeah,
How do you intend to fix some of the loopholes and shortcomings of the system?
Firstly, I think that it is the civil servants have a problem, and so do magistrates. What is, even the army as well, the basis on which people get promoted and appointed is truncated. You see. So you can't really see any rhyme or reason in it. And that's what corrupts the system. So instead of people going for competence and hard work as the path towards progressing, they have to look for connections or bribery and stuff like that to progress. And that's what destroys the army, destroys the police, and destroys the legal system. And I think that you have to look at that again. And you know, some magistrates and some judges are put in the most impossible position, which I call passive corruption. Example, you're a young magistrate, you're sitting in the bench, you're 27 years old, and you lose a family member in your village, and you need to go for the funeral. You don't have money. You go to your landlord because you're renting. You say, please, I need 500,000 to solve this problem. They give you the 500,000. You go do your thing, and you're planning to pay him back. But before, you are sitting in court, and your landlord turns up in a case against another tenant who hasn't paid his rent. And he's asking you to kick out the tenant. And you can look at this landlord who was nice to you and give you money. Mm-hmm. You haven't taken any bribe, but your conscience is compromised. Yeah. So I think to fix the system, magistrates have to be put in a position where things like rent and electricity and water and transportation are not an issue. Right. That will cause him to be vulnerable. To
be tempted.
Exactly. So I think things like that. But don't get me wrong, I think corruption is a moral issue. So I don't think that at higher salaries would solve anything, because otherwise the guys who were stealing in Cameroon
would have stopped a
long time ago. Okay.
So my next question has to do with, you mentioned earlier about not being opposed to constitutional amendments.
Yeah.
And
I mean, not even a constitutional amendment, a new constitution has to be written.
Okay. Fair enough. What's your take on presidential term limits?
Well, you have to limit, obviously have to limit it.
To where do you?
A maximum two. Maximum.
2 terms.
Yeah, 2 terms. 2 terms of 4 to 5 years, I think. Each, maybe 5 years, 2 terms. It's absolutely necessary. Strengthening of the institutions, making sure that in certain areas, even if the president appoints, he cannot fire. That has to do like the corruption agency, the elections agency, and many other agencies, or the auditing agency. You know, places where somebody is called upon to take decisions that can be detrimental to the state or to the government, that can cause a position of conflict. So you have to free them by making sure that even if the president appoints them, the procedure for dismissal has to be different.
Okay. Speaking of a LECAM, so a lot of people say the people who have been appointed to oversee this very important arm of the electoral process are cronies of the president.
Of course, they're appointed by the president, they're paid by them, and the president, they don't have a term, and they can be fired by the president. So of course, you know, he who pays the piper calls the tune. So there's no illusions about that. And so they were basically lifted from the CPDM party and appointed. So there's no doubt that that is what we are going to get. But I'm saying that that can be beaten simply by getting the people to be conscious. And I keep saying that no sophistication in any kind of fraud can be above the will of the people. And that's what I'm gunning for.
So in the 2011 elections, the Commonwealth monitored the elections, and I believe they put out a report which is online for everybody to see. Do you know of any international players who are going to be involved in elections this year?
Well, I know the Commonwealth is willing. I know the Francophonie is willing. I know the European Union is willing. The African Union, as a matter of course, does. But all these people can only come to the country if they're invited by the state. So that's what I think.
Anyway, Barrister, at this point, time is our worst enemy. Yeah. We could keep this conversation going for 3-4 days. You're obviously a very well-informed and smart human being. Yeah. But we also have other things to do today, so you can get ready for your stuff in the evening. Now, before we shut this down, a word or two for the people out there watching?
Well, listen, this is what I have to say to the Cameroonians. The elections this year are critical for our country. It is absolutely necessary for you to, if you're in the diaspora, to make sure that our people register, they vote. It is important that they don't think about boycotting anything. And also, I think it's important for me to make the point about what I've seen so far. I've traveled in 7 regions, and I've met with people from everywhere, in 7 regions. The young, the women, and the old. And the kind of strength they're giving me through the hope they see in what I'm proposing has touched me greatly. So I need, through this, the CryoutTV, to thank them very much for their support, especially the people in Houston, Texas, who came to meet me. They've been coming to the hotel to see me, and I'm really touched by their concern for the country. So I have to thank them also very, very much. And to those of our brothers who are in Washington, I look forward to seeing them. Those in LA, I look forward, and also those in Quebec and in Toronto. I'm happy, very happy. The guys in France for the Now movement are doing an amazing job there. And I know they're on the 6th, they're going to Belgium also to meet with the people there. So everywhere, I only heard that somebody called and they're going to start a group in Russia, the Now movement. So I want to thank you, and in concluding to congratulate you and for this TV, for what it's doing, keeping everybody knowledgeable as what's happening back home, and also for having me on this panel, and congratulate you also for your bilingualism.
Thank you. Well, thank you so very immensely for your time, Barrister Akere Muna.
Thank you.
Good luck with your lofty objective.
Thank you very much.
I hope our next sit down will be at a much higher level.
Yeah, at the inaugural.
Exactly. Yeah. And hopefully at some point in November, your friend Sad will call you and say, Alf Mabruk.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
All right. Fellow viewers, you have all heard it from Mr. Akere, Barrister Akere Muna himself. Thank you all very kindly for watching. Stay tuned to CryoutTV, and see you all next time.